All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Today is the day for the Board of Directors meeting. So the date is February 14th, 2024. So we'll start off by recognizing that we're meeting on the territories of the Hupechis and the Tshant First Nations, and to recognize and appreciate that fact. Because our meeting is hybrid, there are and will be some people who are coming into this meeting from outside of those territories, potentially on Nuu-chah-nulth territories, potentially as well on Coast Salish or Kwakwaka'wakw or the Tongan-speaking territory as well. From that, because we are in a hybrid format, we do have people in the gallery and they'll be able to participate in question period as normal. But those of you online who may be tempted to use the chat function on YouTube or the chat function on Zoom, we don't monitor those. So we have an email address, responses@acrd.bc.ca, that you can send messages to, and we'll check that at the end of the day. And with that in mind, we will do introductions going around the table counterclockwise from here, and then I'll call out folks online to introduce themselves. With that in mind, I'll take a deep breath and move to Heather. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Debbie Haggard, City appointed representative to the Regional District Board and Vice Chair of the Regional District.
I'm Rennie LaCourciere. I'm the alternate for Sprout Lake, and he's not able to be here today, so I'm here. Hi.
Good afternoon, it's Kwame Mariah Coots, representative for Utah-Pacific Government. Thank you.
Mike Sparrow, Regional Director for Cherry Creek.
Susan Roth, Regional Director for Beaver Creek.
Lavana Mastrangelo, representative from Utah-Ucluelet First Nation.
Ada Siga, Director for Area C, Long Beach.
Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet. Kirsten Johnson for Toquat Nation.
Jack McCummon, alternate Beaufort.
And Daniel Saya, the CAO for the ACRD.
And I'm John Jack. I'm the representative for the Huu-ay First Nations as well as the chairperson. Okay, so we do have some folks on the staff side if you want to introduce yourselves as well.
I'm Terry Fong. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at the Regional District.
Good afternoon, Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services.
Good afternoon, Alex Dyer, Planning Manager with the ACRD.
Great. And I think that brings us to online. Tom, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Tom Steer. I'm the appointed director from the District of Tofino.
And Bob, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Bob Schmidt. I'm the alternate director for Bamfield, sitting in for Bob Beckett.
Thank you. And Shari.
Good afternoon, Shari Minions, Mayor for the City of Port Alberni.
Thank you. And the other three people we have online are actually just in the building or in the room, and they just have their computers. So with that, that brings us into the rest of the meeting. So before we have an approval of the agenda, I'm wondering if anybody has any timelines or times that they need to step out by. I know that our CAO needs to leave at 4:15. Okay. And anybody else? No? Okay, with that in mind, that brings us to the approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to move the agenda? We do have some modifications. Heather, would you like to introduce them?
Yeah, I just have one late item, 9.3F. It's a late submission for a rezoning application at 6210 Drinkwater Road. I did email out to the directors this morning. It's also posted on our website, and that's for your consideration.
Thank you. Director Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move point 8B, move to an in-camera discussion on the basis of 91A.
91A. Could you identify what 91A is?
I don't have it pulled up right now.
Heather, would you be able to help with that? I believe that has to do with appointing individuals to
Yes, that's the one.
and making sure we protect privacy.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, so could we have that moved to the end of the agenda so that we can have that meeting in camera as per usual? So after the recess, or sorry, after reconvening from the Regional Hospital District Board of Directors. So we'll add that to maybe late business, but we'll move late business to after reconvening from the regional hospital district. Or I think we have an in-camera agenda item that would be between those two. Would that be correct, Heather?
Sorry, I'm just getting there.
The idea would be, in previous meetings, when we have in-camera items, they would come after the hospital district meeting, but before adjournment.
Correct.
Okay, so if we can have a preparation for the motion to be read, but it would be based on the 91F or C? I can't remember.
91A.
Okay, thank you. That would be added to the agenda as an amendment. Okay, and with that in mind, is that it for any amendments to the agenda? Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to declarations. Does anyone have any declarations of conflicts of interest or gifts exceeding $250 in value, as well as any perceived conflicts of interest? Director Coots?
I believed that I did, but upon discussing with my team, it is far enough away that I believe it is all right. In regards to, pardon me, request for decisions and bylaws, and B, my younger half sister is related to one of the participants. So I will leave that up to the board whether or not they would like me to declare a conflict or not.
Your younger half sister. So I think that's probably fine, but it is up to each member of the board to determine whether or not they are affected by conflicts of interest. I would just leave that up to your discretion. So, thank you. We'll do a quick pause to let you decide. Okay, any further comments or questions? Sorry, any further declarations? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is adoption of minutes. Item A is the Agricultural Development Committee dated January 23rd, 2024. Any comments? We can move to adopt. Thank you, Director Roth. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Mastrangelo. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item B, the Bamfield Area Services Committee meeting. We do have one correction from Heather. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I made a mistake in spelling alternate director Bob Schmidt's last name. So if we could receive the minutes with this amendment.
Thank you. Would you like to move that with that amendment? Thank you, Director Roth. Seconded by, well, do you want a second? Thank you. All right, any comments? How often does that happen to you, Bob? Do people just add D's all the time?
It's been a lifelong issue.
As someone with two first names, I'll commiserate. So with that in mind, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. All right, that brings us to item C, which is the Board of Directors meeting for January 24th, 2024. Any comments, corrections? We can just move to adopt as well. Thank you, Director Roth. Seconded by. Thank you, Director Coots. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Your motion carries. Brings us to item D, Committee of the Whole meeting dated January 24th, 2024. Same. Thank you for moving, Director Coots. Seconded by Dr. Sparrow, I guess. He's slightly faster. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And lastly, we have the Committee of the Whole meeting dated February 7th, 2024. Thank you, Director Ross. Seconded by Director Tiga. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, so that brings us to item 5. So these are petitions, delegations, and presentations. So we have 3 different presentations today. Normally they're recorded 10 minutes max. If I hold up 2 fingers or 1 finger, I'm not interrupting. That's how many minutes you have left. If anybody has any comments or questions, we can save them for after the presentation. If we get close to the end of the of your recorded time, and I don't think you're close to finishing your presentation, I'll interrupt you and ask the board if we can continue. The answer is almost invariably yes. But with that in mind, we do have Mr. Ben Hyman, and I believe the chair of the regional library, Aaron Hemmons as well. So I don't know if you're speaking to, but please come forward. I think your presentation's been loaded up, but that's not there. Thank you and welcome.
Hi, thank you very much for having us. My name is Erin Hemmons. I'm a counselor in the city of Nanaimo and the chair of the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board. I'm here with the executive director, Ben Hyman. Ben is going to provide some really great stats for you that are community specific. But I just want to frame up today's conversation, and I want to begin by acknowledging that we have some trustees in the room, some past trustees who have given their time very generously to Vancouver Island Regional Library over the years. So Debbie, thank you very much. Shari, I know is online. Marilyn, good to see you again. And Lavanna, who joined us at our AGM last weekend as an alternate. So thank you. So this is actually the 7th presentation that we've done, touring around. And part of that is that Ben and I are kind of new leaders to the organization, but also because we had a very unusual budget year. And so we want to put in FaceTime with communities to kind of go through that with everyone. So budget 2024 was a very unusual year, and I want to bring that message from the board that we understand it was a very unusual year. It was about this time in 2023, last year, we discovered quite a significant cash flow issue at the regional library, where for over the course of about 6 years, we had been using reserves for operations, and we hadn't accounted for that in the budget. So the board actually wasn't terribly aware of it. So you can imagine when this hit last year, it was quite a problem for us. We have a very extensive budget process, and last year we actually we kind of doubled that. So trustees and the executive committee participated in far more meetings than we typically do to try to figure out how to rectify the issue. And I want to state that throughout the whole process, board's direction to administration was that we wanted to see no service or program level cuts for libraries. And there's a few reasons for that. One of them, and probably the biggest one, is that in our region, which is vast, about 30% of our residents use the library services. And we know anecdotally that the majority of those people who use our resources and use our services are from groups that would present statistically more vulnerable. So young mums, new to Canada Canadians, isolated seniors, etc. Ben has this great stat that I'm going to take from him, but public libraries actually, next to water, sewer, and waste, are the most public used service in Canada. So I just want to personally, before I turn it to Ben, I want to personally commend the board for their work with us last year and taking this issue very, very seriously, and particularly very clearly stating that they didn't want to see any library cuts, understanding how important the service is. The board continues to advocate to the provincial government. We had one-time funding last year. We have an AVIC resolution going in this year that I'd be happy to provide anyone with, that I hope you can support. And just, I want everyone to know I am the chair, I'm the face of the board, and I'm here available anytime for any questions or comments or concerns about the regional library. So over to Ben, who has all of the statistics for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin, and thank you, Chair, and everybody on the board for this opportunity. By my math, I have about 7 minutes to go through about 40 slides, so I'll speak quickly and happy to take questions at the end. So Vancouver Island Regional Library is now in its 88th year, and we're privileged, grateful to provide library services on the territories of 53 First Nations, in the north, in Haida Gwaii, down south, the territories of Lekwungen speaking people, and Suk and Sydney, and then here and across to the Heiltsuk and Newholt territory. So that's 38 local government members. In the olden days, all of our members were school districts and health authorities. Somewhere around the 1950s, that became local governments. So we serve about the population of Surrey, spread over 42,000 square kilometers. So in 2023, board and staff commenced a big undertaking, which was to review its vision and mission, as well as its strategic plan, The gist of the vision and mission is we're focused on empowering our communities right across the region. And really, we're in the building community and lifting people up business, and business is absolutely booming, particularly post-COVID. As Aaron said, it's a very high-use public service. This is nationally observed. More than 30% of our users across our service area are active library card holders, and that underrepresents because there's a number of services folks can take advantage of, and there's no way to track what that looks like. Just a heat map. There's a number of other usage maps included at the end of the presentation that I won't go through just because of time, but they're there for your information. I don't find these heat maps very useful. Why did I put it in here? Just to show that where there's denser population, that's where you see usage. But know that residents of the ACRD use our services, and every one of our branches, we've got lots of usage, and from ACRD happening in Port Hardy, in Nanaimo, and as far south as Sooke. As you know, we have 3 bricks and mortar locations within the ACRD: Port Alberni, Tofino, and Ucluelet. Collectively saw 56,000 visitors last year. To put that into Valley terms, that's more than double the number of visitors to the West Coast General Hospital. So again, very high use. 7,500 ACRD cardholders, that's about a quarter of the population. We had 83 events in the ACRD, attended by over 1,600 people. 120,000 physical items circulated just within the ACRD. We provide services to all demographics, and we have the 3rd largest library collection in the province behind Vancouver and Burnaby. 38% of our users are now online. So in addition to bricks and mortar and physicality, meeting spaces, and all the rest of that, up to 38% of users are exclusively online, taking good advantage of our streaming audio, streaming video, downloadable ebooks, and podcasts. Those are very high use. I see we're 300,000 plays per month of our songs and videos, and 50,000 classes were started through our LinkedIn Learning subscription. So when we talk about families, affordability, and livability in the Valley and right across our region, that's the impact we're delivering. Our cards are minimally valued at $700 per year. Over the term of our strategic plan, we'll fully cost the ROI and the cost avoidance for those library cards. In addition, residents within the ACRD are making really good use of region-wide services that we offer centrally. So coordination of partnerships like Books for Babies with Island Health, the Learning with Sia Yutsis speaker series in partnership with TRC, UBC Press and School District 68. And in the Creativity Commons, lots of 3D printing, digital conversion of those old family Betavision films, so forth, to current formats. And there's an awful lot of self-published authors in the ACRD that take advantage of our espresso book printing machine in Nanaimo. Strategic plan, I'll just go through this quickly again, given time. We engaged over 3,200 people last year, really asking the question, what do you want us to be at 90? And in that, we reviewed all of our local government member strategic plans. And for ACRD, picking up especially on economy and COVID recovery, and partnerships and alignment themes, and you see those matched in our own plan. I'll just highlight this one. We've really made a recommitment to improving literacy levels. Literacy is a key social determinant of health, arguably the key determinant of health. And it's been dropping like stone in our region the last 25 years. So everything we can do with partners, ST79, Island Health, and so forth, that's what we're hoping to do. Just leave these goals. Each of them I could go on and on about. ST70, Connected Coast are key partners in reaching some of these objectives. Just pick up on strategic goal 4 in communities right across the region. We're one of the last third spaces. So a place that folks are welcome, inclusive, and accepting without monetizing. And 5th goal is really about supporting our workforce to meet the changes that we've seen, particularly post-COVID. So again, budget 2024, and Chair Hammond spoke to this already. Library Act requires us to bring a budget in September for the fiscal year starting January.
Before you start, I think we're going to get close to the limit. So if we could have a motion to continue the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Ross, seconded by Dr. Coots. All those in favor? Motion carried. Please continue.
Awesome. Thank you for your support. I'll still talk quickly so we can. So first piece of context for budget 2024, Erin brought in the financial legacy that Board of Management dealt with in the previous year. The other piece was this report by the Canadian Urban Institute, which really identified how public libraries are contributing to recovery, competitiveness, and resilience in every community across the country. And for us, it confirmed that the issues we were facing, the opportunities and challenges were nationally observed. So first, we hope we're enabling governments to meet their obligations to strengthen the common good. I'll pick up that public libraries through the report are shown to be critical social infrastructure and community hubs. And that really through COVID, we grew into space we weren't previously, particularly around vulnerability across the country and throughout our region. Canada and BC in particular lags behind the G8 levels for funding for public libraries, and the report makes a number of good reports for Canada and for the province of BC. Again, we've got, thanks to the work of Chair Hemmons and her counterpart at Greater Victoria Public Library, we think a really strong resolution coming forward to AVICC. So the assumptions for budget 2024, and again, just to repeat some of what Chair Hemmons said, we understood the budget needed to be right-sized and needs-based for all operating expenses. We want to maintain operations and services that would be above historical increases given the legacy and the context of that CY report. And that we'd be establishing a capital levy through some pretty specific work on the facilities policy and facilities master plan. So it's a big year in terms of getting new foundation under us, strategic plan, facilities plan. By the numbers, the 2024 budget is 38 million, which is 15% over 2023. And again, as Chair Hemmons said, that's not the typical sort of increase you can expect to see, nor has it been. Some really difficult choices were made to bring this one in. We did reduce the exempt staff complement by 5 FTE before January 1. You can see what the local government levies were there. The largest pressures, like all public libraries, about 65% of our expenditures is labor. It's all those wonderful folks that do great work across the system. You can see the range per capita and the impact for the ACRD electoral area specifically. Just before we came, I had a look at if you include the urban areas within the ACRD, the total cost per capita comes to about 5 family visits to the Echo Center. And if you exclude the urban areas, it's about the cost of 6 family visits to the Echo Center. So we're talking about a range of $60 to $78 per capita. For ACRD, important to know, for all of our local governments by law, we apportion our budget 50% based on land value and 50% based on population. The ACRD comprises 7% of our service population, and communities are contributing 7% of the levy. So that's as you'd expect. The ACRD electoral area total levy per capita is right in the middle of our 10 regional districts. It's not the highest, it's not the lowest. Sandwiched right in the middle there. And just observing here, that's true that electoral area D does skew things a little bit for the EAs. There's a gap between number of humans and the average converted land value. So again, in terms of comparison, for each of these presentations we've gone to have a real look against the core to see how is the cost per community. That has demonstrated again for ACRD that membership in a system like VRL always reduces the costs for comparable services for libraries. That's because of the economies of scale and the shared administration and so forth. For the total ACRD population of the total local governments, it's running about 500,000 below the cohort average, but has 3 times the number of the average branches and 3 times the size of the collection. So it's really good value for money, especially for modern, thriving, and really effective library services. Just another slide on comparison showing in a bit more detail. Not much data to compare to for the smallest communities as we look across the province and even Western Canada. So we've grouped in a couple of different cohorts to find some comparators. And again, in each case, we're below that or very near average. And as I say, after this slide, we've got some breakdown of the physical branch usage, just for your interest. If you have any questions, just let me know. That's the end of the presentation. Thanks for the extension.
No worries. Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions? Dr. Haggard, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ben and Aaron, for coming to Port Alberni once again. Always nice to see you and brought out the sunshine just for you. A couple of comments and a couple of questions, if I may, Mr. Chair. Just so you know, City Council did send in a resolution to ABICC requesting that the province start to better adequately fund our libraries and keep up with the rate of inflation on that as well. So we're very supportive of the library, so I just want to make that really clear. A couple of questions though. You offer a lot of really fantastic services, but unfortunately, they're not offered throughout the libraries. I feel that a lot of the services you offer, we don't get to take advantage of them in our Port Alberni library because they're not offered here. I would like to see a better system where you offer services to all libraries, not just one special library. Does that make sense?
Thank you for that observation. It's something we picked up in our strategic plan and we heard from folks in the Valley and elsewhere. So it's one of the commitments is to look at equity. What are our service models? And I think a couple of things. First, remembering that 38% of users don't value bricks and mortar. So they're using our virtual services almost entirely. So for the remainder, how do we really get out from beyond bricks and mortar and provide those and begin to differentiate those service models? Just on the way here, we were talking about some of the staff reports that will come forward this year. I think there's some really innovative things we can do in the Valley beyond branch.
And my second question is, I know we're not on the list for renovations any longer, but a lot of people don't feel that our library is culturally welcome. We have a very large Indigenous population in our community, and don't feel welcome in our library. Is it possible for you to maybe visit our library and look at things that you can do to make it more welcoming?
Yeah, thanks for that. We heard that feedback also, and I guess a couple of things. Province did fund us. We're the only library in the province that received an inclusive governance grant at the end of 2023, and it will be spent this year and next. This year is a research design phase, and intended is to be engagement. And so with that, we hope is to further spend provincial money on ways that we can improve our built environment to be much more inclusive, as well as potentially our governance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Dr. McClellan, please go ahead.
Thank you. You mentioned that for, was it 3 years, the surplus that you had left over from previous years was used up, and was it that length of time? Or was it 2? I can't remember. It doesn't really matter. I'm just curious how that could have happened and what you're doing so it doesn't happen again, because it looks to me like you've increased the assessment by quite a bit. And how do we know it's not going to happen again? To me, that was just a plain waste. And if it's a mistake, it's a mistake. But still, how did it happen?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to explain it is previous administration had a pattern of under budgeting and overspending. That's the short version. This board immediately responded 2 things. First, appointed a new auditor. So that work's underway. And the key question to the previous auditor is, how did this get missed? And then the second thing is the board is reestablishing an audit finance committee. So that will get kicked off before development of budget 2025. We've got some pretty sharp folks on the board. It's a board of 38. It's the largest board in any sector on Vancouver Island. And there are a lot of eyes trained on the spending, and really well supported this year by Chair Hemmons and the executive committee. And I guess the other piece to know is that we closed 2023 5% over on revenue, which was excellent, and 4% underspent. So that pattern breaking the back on that previous administration's pattern of spending.
Thank you. Director Roth?
I would just like to know if you can provide us with the last 3 audits so we can see ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. It's all on our website. Our consolidated statements are all there.
You bet. Thank you. Any further comments? I had a question about your 38% of people who are using it online. I'm one of those. I do the ebook thing. Do you buy into a program that has certain strictures, or are there ways that you can expand, say, the number of copies available per type of book?
Yeah, thank you. For ebooks, there's a number of different licenses, and the primary license model is that we buy one copy with multiple use. So instead of one copy, one use, that sort of. And then we do buy for blocks of usage, as well as we can license for specific titles for a period of time.
All right, thanks. Any further comments? I see none. I'd like to thank you for your presentation. On behalf of the board, we look forward to participating in some of those rigorous discussions. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. I think that brings it to, thank you for stopping to share there. Oh, I'm wondering, could you stop sharing? I don't know. I think it's right in the top middle. It's hidden. All right, there we go. Okay, so next up we have, I think it's Ms. Crystal Chadburn of the Ministry of Forests in regards to senior invasive plants. Sorry, she's a senior invasive plant specialist. Oh, this is perfect for the people we have afterwards as well. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the board, and yeah, please take it away.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I was invited here to share a little bit about invasive plant management. Possibly there was some questions about herbicide use for invasive plants. So I put together just a few slides to give you a very high level overview so we can make sure there's time to address if there's any questions. I didn't get a real whole list of what you might be interested in. And of course, it's a very complicated and broad topic. With the program that I work for, which is the Ministry of Forests Invasive Plant Program. So I'll share my screen here. You should be able to see that, okay? Yeah?
Yes, sorry, we can see it.
Great, okay, thank you. So I'm just going to kind of fly over with the short amount of time here just talk a little bit about invasive plant management, specifically about the pest management plan that we just finished consultation on, which might have been the trigger for you guys to invite me. I'll do just a quick summary of the management activities on provincial public lands within your regional district. And then, as I said, hopefully we'll have some time for any questions or discussion that you have. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, when I use the term invasive plant, we are talking only about non-native plants, plants that did not evolve here, that were introduced either accidentally or on purpose as ornamentals, and cause negative environmental impacts. So we're primarily an environmental protection program, but of course, many of these non-native invasive plants also impact agricultural values, cultural values from Indigenous communities, and some human health values as well. And that all links to the economic risks and values that these plants negatively impact as well. So the reason that they are a problem is they have no predators or pathogens here. When they're brought here, they are introduced without those checks that keep them in a natural state in their native range. So when they come here, they're able to establish quickly, spread very fast without anything eating them or slowing them down, and they can outcompete native plants. They often can grow in difficult conditions where our native plants cannot. And for the most part, they're very difficult to control, which gives them that competitive edge. Just a comment on kind of the human health side of things. So there's a large list of invasive plants that we manage for environmental issues. You may have heard about the knotweeds, which I'll touch on later, which significantly negatively impact fish and fish populations when they get into river systems. But I wanted to mention in the French Creek area, kind of on your border, is there is a pretty significant, our biggest population of giant hogweed in the province. So this is a plant that we're always looking for within your area, and we would manage immediately if found. The sap from this plant causes severe burns, phytosensitivity. So every time you go back into the sun, it causes burns again. So it's one that we're watching for. And another couple that I just wanted to throw in there very quickly, I don't have time to talk about all the priority species in your area, but poison hemlock is spreading quite rapidly on South Island. So we are doing our best to work with local governments down here and prevent the spread into your area. And of course, if it's reported to us or we find it, it would be another priority because every little piece of the plant part is deadly toxic. And of course, we do hear lots of reports out of the States where it is more widely established of poisonings, and it also causes sap that causes, or has sap that causes rashes. And wild parsnip, we only have 40 sites in the province, none yet on the island, but it's just another example of one that we're very much working towards preventing from getting here. So in October of last year, we began what's called a pest management plan. That's what PMP stands for, replacement project. And I believe that your regional district would have been reached out by a contractor that we hired, who didn't send the best information out. But I think that's why you reached out to me to come and talk from our provincial perspective here. This pest management plan is going to be covering the entire area, as you can see in red, basically all of southern BC, including Haida Gwaii. And it's replacing 3 existing pest management plans that have been in place for 10 to 20 years, 25 years in some cases. So pest management plans are legal documents. I'll talk about them very quickly. They can only be in place for every 5 years, and they're very high-level overarching documents that show how we'll be in compliance with the law and how we will be making treatment decisions and what methods we're using, etc. So, and the point of that is this is not a new project in your area. It is just a continuation of getting the permitting in place for the program that's existed for many years. The reasons we develop a pest management plan is to ensure strategic and successful invasive plant management, and we use what's called integrated pest management principles. It is legally required under the BC Integrated Pest Management Act and regulations, so right down to the sections that have to be in that plan and the public consultation and Indigenous consultation, which of course we would do as government anyways. That has to occur. And really important one is an ongoing opportunity to invite engagement with Indigenous communities that aren't already involved. So across the province, our program does manage invasive plants across provincial public lands throughout the entire province. And so we have about 205 Indigenous communities that we work with or we reach out to, and then we have about 50 kind of formal relationships where we have funding sharing and co-management of the land. So we're always looking for those opportunities. And of course, within your regional district, this is the list of communities I just wanted to mention, so you know that we have reached out to and will continue engaging with. So integrated pest management, I'm going to go quickly through all this, but we can go back to any of it if you want, just to get through. The Integrated Pest Management Program, which is recognized across the world as the most effective way to manage these non-native invasive species, involves a series of steps from prevention, which is really important, best practices, cleaning, legislation, et cetera, identification, make sure that we know the species and the risk. So we have risk assessments to make sure that these plants are indeed a risk before we manage them. Maintaining the inventory, so we're making strategic level decisions. We're not treating in the heart of an infestation. We treat outliers first and push our way back. And then treatment method selection and of course monitoring and evaluation. I always throw this slide in when I'm doing a presentation because I often get the question, when people are used to a species like you may be down here on the island or South Island in particular, oh, you know, Scotch broom, why are you bothering? It's here, it's spread. But we actually prioritize on of those species that have not spread to its complete ecological niche. And we work very closely with the United States and Alberta to make sure that plants that they are having serious problems with are not brought in to the province as well. So we work a lot with prevention, and I want you to watch out for yellow star thistle. It is not here yet, and you can see it causes devastating hydrology and loss of habitat if it arrives. So if it arrives, we'll be jumping on it immediately. There are a variety of treatment methods that can be used for the plants that we are trying to control. We do mechanical treatment, digging, cutting, mowing, sometimes excavation, depending on site conditions and archaeological values. We have biological treatment for a small subset of invasive plants. That's bringing in those native predators, those native insects that kept these plants in check in their native range. And that only happens at about 10 to 12 years of research to ensure host specificity, and they will only target that invasive plant. And then, of course, we use targeted spot application of herbicide. And so the method that we use is chosen on a site-by-site basis. We look at the soil type, we look at how those plants spread. Is it only by seed? Then mechanical methods might work. If it's by rhizome, via underground roots, then we do need to use systemic herbicides because mechanical methods, like for knotweed, if you cut a knotweed patch, it actually stimulates the spread and makes it bigger. What is not permitted in our program? There's absolutely no aerial application. We are separate than any sort of Ministry of Forests aerial application for forestry operations. This is a non-native invasive plant program only. We do not target treatment of native plants. So any berry picking or culturally important plants are not managed, are not treated. And we're only talking about herbicides. We don't use any insecticides or other pesticides within our program. So in your area, in last year, the treatments under the pest management plan, sorry, one thing I missed is the ministries in BC work together on these pest management plans because invasive plants do not respect jurisdictional boundaries. So Ministry of Transportation, BC Parks, and Ministry of Forests share these pest management plans. And now, since our reorg, the new Ministry of Water, Land, and Natural Resource Stewardship, Walrus as we call it, will also be joining us. So the land management ministries, we share these pest management plans and we share the legal authorization, and we all follow the same rules of setbacks from water and sensitive ecosystems. And we do consultation together to try to make it less workload for all involved. So under the pest management plan, which is all provincial public lands, all of the treatments in your area were on Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure jurisdiction. We actually had no Ministry of Forest treatments of priority species or any species in this past year. And you can see here we have the knotweeds. The invasive knotweeds are the top priority for treatment along roadsides. We are trying to prevent them from getting into riparian areas. And we do have some really important treatment projects on your boundaries outside of your area with the Namikis First Nation, for example, trying to protect fish habitat. So we need to make sure that we don't allow the knotweeds to spread throughout on roadsides. So the Bohemian knotweed, there was 3 sites, Japanese knotweed 10, gorse, which is similar to Scotch broom, but it has spikes on it, 6 sites. It's not very as common in your area, so we want to keep it that way. 1 site of Japanese butterbur, which is a new provincial priority in the province that's starting to spread from people's gardens, and 1 treatment of yellow iris, plus 3 mechanical treatments of what's called Portuguese broom, which we just completed a risk assessment on and confirmed ID using some genetics last year. So this is a white flowered broom, and it is what we call our provincial early detection and rapid response, trying to get rid of it from the province, so top priority. And that's all I'm going to say for the presentation, but I'm sure there's lots of questions, and I can come back at a later date and focus in more detail on any part of this if that's of interest.
All right, thank you, Crystal. I'm wondering if you could stop sharing so I can see it on the screen.
Yes, I can. Just have to.
Yeah, and thank you for your presentation. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Oh, there we go. Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Crystal, for the presentation. And I think you did clearly explain within your presentation around you're specifically within the invasive plant species. I am curious, and you may be able to answer, glyphosate, of course, is a huge issue that we're concerned about. And UNBC has just been awarded a great grant to look at those herbicide-based residues and ecosystem health. I wonder if you'd be able to give us any insight into in the ACRD region, the applications. I know it's through forestry, but certainly the extent of glyphosate in the ACRD region.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't have any stats for forestry use, treating the broadleaf plants for conifer regeneration. That would be my counterparts in the ministry. But for invasive plant management, we do also use glyphosate. In fact, under the BC Integrated Pest Management Act, glyphosate products are the only products we're allowed to use within 10 meters of water. And the reason for that is that glyphosate products are not mobile in soil. They don't move at all, and they break down within 37 days. So other products have more residuality and so are not allowed to be used closer to sensitive habitats. So I know the BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Canada has been getting a lot of questions around whether they should look at amendments to that act to allow for other products. But in Canada, just so everyone's on the same page for the framework, Health Canada regulates herbicide products for use in Canada. And then the BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change is the one that regulates how we use it. So Health Canada will say a glyphosate product is registered for use and put label requirements to keep the use of it safe. And then BC Ministry of Environment says, okay, if you're going to use this product, here's all the rules around it. So the main concerns about glyphosate have come since it is one of the most widely used and widely studied active ingredients ever and across the world. The main concerns have come since the International Agency of Research, IARC, International Agency of Cancer Research, IARC, declared glyphosate as probably carcinogenous. And so the one thing that's really important, because there has been a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation spreading on social media and whatnot, but the most important thing to remember is that IARC, and it says it on their own website, they regulate things in categories based on toxicity, and they don't look at exposure. So if you look at their categories with glyphosate, in that same category is red meat, is shift work, is pickled vegetables. So to determine the true risk, and this is what happens with Health Canada and all their toxicologists when they do reviews, is you have to look at the risk. So smoking is a risk, but if you're not exposed to it, you don't have that risk. So with glyphosate, just a caution, you also need to look at the exposure level. And so that's why most governments in the world have done a review, a reevaluation, it's called, of glyphosate products and have kept them as legal to use. So if you're interested, I can send you all those documents, but that's where we follow Health Canada's direction on what to use. And many people are concerned about using it for sure. And so we do spend a lot of our time kind of discussing options, but we are restricted to using glyphosate products or mechanical methods if we're within 10 meters of water.
Thank you. That feels like the equivalent of controlling amperage, but not voltage. But Um, from that perspective, are there any other comments or questions? I'm gonna do something weird. Joanne, did you have anything you want to do? Okay, we have someone from the Scotch Broom community groups
Oh,
here.
hi, Joanne. Joanne's here.
Too easy not to. Okay, with that in mind, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and we'll make sure that your presentation is available to anybody who's interested online.
Okay.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so that brings us to the last presentation, and that's Ms. Joanne Sales, and I don't know your name. Are you just gonna sit? Oh, okay. So Joanne is from the Broom Busters Invasive Plant Society, and she's here for a presentation. So thank you and welcome. No worries, we'll figure it out.
Hey, good afternoon, Chair and Directors. I'm Joanne Sales, Executive Director of Boombusters Invasive Plant Society. Thank you for letting me speak today. If I can figure out how to do this. Okay, here we go. I want to thank the ACRD for helping to pass the resolution at the ICC BCM to control Scotch broom. Now the question is what do we do and why? And based on Crystal's presentation, it is well established problem. Okay, but we still can't ignore it. That would be all I have to say about that. Primarily because of the fire danger. Okay, so Scotch broom has naturally occurring dry branches and high oil content. I particularly like this kind of long quote by Terry Peters, who's the retired fire chief from Powell River. And the middle paragraph, the plant's volatile oils make it an easy ignition source, especially during the summer months when the plant dries. And its ability to spread quickly and form dense stands increases the fuel load, impeding the fire management efforts, causing further spread into natural forests and elevating the risk of wildfires. So that's pretty serious. Also, it is the top offender of biodiversity in BC. If you look at this chart, those are the primary invasive species that are having a negative impact on our species at risk. The very top bar is Scotch broom, and you can see how much more dramatically impacting it is on the invasive species. It is the invasive species causing the greatest harm to species at risk in BC. And when you see how densely it grows by those photos on the right, you can see how can any of our native plants or animals that are depending upon them survive in that environment. Okay, so Scotch broom is a woody weed. It is not a tree, so it outgrows, grows faster than the trees, and smothers anything that's beneath it. I just love these photos, so I just like to include them. This is from the SPCA in Port Alberni. This was the Alberni Deep Spaceport Volunteers a number of years ago, but it just shows how much broom can grow in one area and how huge it can get. One of our primary problems is the broom covering transmission lines. If you look at these photos, you can see that if it is in fact a fire hazard, which it is, it greatly increases the danger that fire can spread across the island. And it's also spreading seeds. It's an avenue of spreading seeds to places that currently do not have Scotch broom. And it blocks escape routes. That's the area of the picture in the middle where I'm walking between some giant broom. That area has been cleared now, and the owner of that land actually graded the road there and built new gates that did not have locks on them, because he said we need to have escape routes for residents in areas if there's an earthquake or a fire. BC Hydro does not cut the Scotch broom down when it removes trees, and it says it doesn't control it because there's no pressure from government entities. So that's a cue to you all.
Scotch broom has a negative economic impact on forestry farmer, food security, recreation, and tourism. These photos here, you can see the broom moving from the transmission lines into the young forest. Two of the pictures are farms that will be pretty much useless in the future. And the one picture from Sproat Lake of broom growing on a trail, a walkway that residents and visitors use. So what can we do? These are all pictures here from the ACRD area. First of all, Port Alberni voted to co-sponsor a Broom Buster event this year. And we asked for that based on the fact that we need more volunteers and to raise awareness of the importance of controlling a Scotch broom in our area here. And Sproat Lake Area D hosts a yearly broom cutting event that has become quite popular. And once again, education is the key. It's like, if we have a public event, the most important part of a public event is that it educates people to remove broom on their own property or on the roads right in front of their property. So waste management is a serious problem. Fortunately, at this point, we've been told that the landfill on the West Coast will accept Scotch broom. The problem is that there's pressure now in many waste management areas where they're saying that Scotch broom has to be bagged in plastic, before it's taken to a disposal site. As you can see from the amount of broom that needs to be bagged, that is practically impossible. Plus, the people who would be so inclined to do it won't use the plastic, because that's also another environmental crisis. So, in other words, they just stop. They stop cutting the broom, which is not a solution at all. So Redfish is going to be doing a broom cut in Tofino as part of the, let's see, how do I say it right? West Coast Triple Plank event, the restoration project. So we expect that to be very highly attended. Broombuster is going to help with tools and signs and so on. And our hope is that that there will be volunteers that will then continue cutting beyond that point, so that we can cut some of these other areas. The pictures you see here are the airport road and around the airport in Tofino, which seems to be the area where the largest amount of broom is growing. And it's also, because it's very open and very hot, it's also the part that will become the hottest. So it would be a good time. It's still manageable. It's still manageable. It could be cleared of Scotch broom. What else can regional districts do? Bylaws. Bylaws educate as well as protect. And the Comox Valley Regional District actually has a bylaw. And that does, for Scotch broom, that doesn't mean that they have no broom, but it does mean that if there's a crisis, if there's a particular situation that's causing a health, safety, or fire hazard, there's something that they can do to deal with it. In Josephine County in Oregon, they have one bylaw, and that is to keep broom away from gravel pits. So one point I was camping in Ucluelet and had to go through a forested area. And of course, there was no broom because it was all shaded until you got to a bridge. And then there was broom all around the bridge. And it was obvious that that broom was brought there by construction trucks, but most likely the gravel itself. So Port Alberni does have a bylaw, and we recommend that that's something that Ucluelet and Tofino actually look at. Usually bylaws are not strictly enforced, but they, once again, it's an education thing. If the municipality finds it useful to pass a bylaw, then that it tells people, oh, I guess I should get rid of this plant. There must be a reason. This is more on the escape route issue. Currently, the policy BC Hydro is to remove trees but leave the broom. Okay, so these are photos of the area where the owner cut down the broom there. That was how tall it was. Now it is clear, and he's graded it and put in new gates. His quote was, "If there's a fire or earthquake, roads on power lines must be clear and available as an escape route. We will have no time to unlock gates. Doing this will save lots of lives. So, another thing that regional districts can do is communicate with residents. And it's a highly effective method when you hear a fire chief talking about this is a problem. This could be signs, newsletters, alerts, social media statements, or newspapers. I'm not sure what regional districts have available to them, but there's ways that communication can happen. And there's definitely is a need for education. People are very concerned about fire. Frequently, they're cutting down the trees on their property, and I've seen Scotch broom, just taking the place of the trees, and that's no solution at all. So climate change has changed everything, and even more so, we can't leave this problem to future generations. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you for your presentation. If you could stop presenting, that would be good so I can see the other folks online. Are there any other comments? Director Roth, please go ahead.
I'm just curious to know if you ever use a chipper, because I know they're pretty tough.
Yes, actually, in the regional districts, well, even here, in the regional districts, broom busters, when we cut broom, we have to hire chipping companies. Yeah, so that's, last year we got a grant from you all. Thank you very much. That's what that money will go towards. Yeah, chipping is the best way to do it. We also stop cutting before the seed pods form, because one of the questions is, isn't that spreading the problem? And it's like, no, because started like about now and until the new seed pods form, usually somewhere between the middle of May to the middle of June, depending on where you're located. There's no seed pods, there's no seeds on the plant. So you can cut them, you can chip them, you can compost them. The branches are not harmful. Also, they do not Scotch broom does not resprout from roots or from pieces of plant, like ivy does, or, Japanese knotweed. So there's a lot of wonderful things we can say about broom, and that's one of them. so it is, we call it the gateway drug to invasive species, because you can do it without getting hurt. It's not like, the knotweed or hogweed or something. That answer your question? Yeah, okay, thank you.
My dad had a hogweed burn on his face for about a year and a half. Not fun. Okay, Director Steer, it looks like you're up next. Please go ahead.
Yes, just thanking. I just wanted to thank Joanne for all the work on the West Coast last year, the collaborative work and many phone calls and connections that were made. It was a wonderful effort, and the fruits of that labor are panning out this year with the work with Redfish. So thank you very much for that persistence and support, and look forward to seeing this, well, if I see you this spring.
Thank you.
Okay, on behalf of the board, Director Coots, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question kind of in regards to your guys' backgrounds and your partnerings. I see you've done partnerships with different varying groups, such as different ACRD members. What do you do in regards with students? Do you do anything with students? I know that Port Alberni here, the alternate schooling, I believe it's just 8th Avenue now. It was vast during my time. I know that they have an outdoor ed class. Do you guys do any partnerships like that with them to teach the students?
Well, we do in Comox Valley and in Parksville, Quality Beach area. We did have this was maybe 12 years ago. We worked with the Port Alberni High School and with the forestry department. I think the broom is now gone off of the high school land. So I think that they've kind of lost some of the enthusiasm, but definitely working with high school students. We've also worked with elementary school students as long as their parents came, but that's pretty much useless. You have to actually cut it properly, else it doesn't die.
Awesome. And just one other one. If a nation wanted to get into contact with you to possibly work in things, how would one go about doing that?
Oh, well, we tried to reach out to them, and we would love it. Yeah, I mean, that is something we would very, very much like to. We have worked with some bands, more like in the South Island, where we basically taught somebody how to do it, and then just gave them some tools to let them deal with it then, so that make sure that they knew how to do it properly. Totally willing to support. Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. Thank you so much. Wonderful
Yes.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Could you turn off the microphone? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item 6A. So 6A is a request for support from Kuwait in regards to letter of support for the nomination of the Bamfield Road Reconciliation Project for the Premier's Award for Excellence in Public Service. This is coming to the board because it's weird for me to sign on behalf of myself to myself. So we're hoping that we can get something so that Deb can sign for us. Director Roth?
I'd like to make the motion as presented.
All right, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Coots. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Well, that was easy. Okay, next up is correspondence for information. There is a lot of correspondence for information, and some of it is quite interesting. I'm wondering if anybody wants to pull anything up. Some of it is quite interesting. It's okay if you don't want to. We can also just have a motion to receive all the correspondence for information. Oh, sorry, Tom. There we go. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I did want to pull out item H, the Clackamas Biosphere Trust, the letter regarding the West Coast Youth Transit recommendation. And I can speak just quickly to that, and there might be a possible motion. I'll look to staff for maybe some response there. The letter clearly indicates and articulates the need for transportation options for youth and to reduce those barriers to access transit. And we would really like to encourage lifelong users of transit on the West Coast, where we don't have a lot of great experience or access to public transportation. So what the suggestion is that we explore in the potential for a youth pass. 0 to 12 is already mandated free by the province. We're looking at that roughly the high school age between 13 and 19. And I'd like for that West Coast Transit Service for that to be explored. And I would look to staff or maybe to the board if a motion would be necessary to direct staff to investigate free fares for youth between 13 and 19 as part of the new West Coast Transit intern service.
Daniel?
The answer from staff is yes. A resolution to explore that would be appreciated because goodness knows it can sometimes take time. And by the time we do the full cycle, I wouldn't want to come back and have elected officials going, why are you doing this? The resolution would be.
I can make a motion if maybe if the wording is not quite correct, you can support me there, but a motion to direct staff to investigate free fares for youth between 13 and 19 as part of the new West Coast Transit Service.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Siga. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried. Thank you. Okay. All right. The only thing I wanted to pull out, and it's only vaguely relating to this, it's just the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. This is just a reminder that we are still working on ensuring that some ministry of BC has an understanding of what they should be doing in regards to any time Highway 4 closes. And if people are stranded on our side, we will take care of them, but we expect the province to help with that. Only vaguely related to what's actually here, but feels like my Carthage. So with that, we can have a motion to receive the items. Thank you, Director Roth, seconded by I don't know, Director Mastandillo. And any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. Motion carried. Okay, so that brings us into item 8, which is the request for decision and bylaws. First of which is the parcel tax roll review panel. Terry, please go ahead.
Thank you. As part of the parcel tax process, every year we have to have a parcel tax roll review panel to authenticate the roll. So we are proposing Tuesday, February 27th at 10 a.m. This is historically a very quick meeting, usually 15 minutes or less. There was, I believe, 5 letters sent out to new people that will be being added to the parcel tax roll as a result of subdivision this year. So they have until, I believe, like the 22nd to provide comment back. And otherwise, we're just looking to have the roll authenticated.
So today I'm hoping for the board to set the meeting date and appoint 3 directors plus an alternate to the panel for the year, please.
22nd is the Friday, I think. Yeah.
27th is the meeting, but the people, if they would like to respond to state that they should not be a part of the role, they have till the 27th.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to move these motions? Or have any comments or questions? Director Roth?
I would be available to be one of the directors, but is there 2 others too?
That's the second motion, so we can do that one first. Yeah.
Sure, I'll make the first motion.
Okay. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor? Your motion carried. Okay, so Dr. Roth has agreed to be one of the directors. Do we have any other directors? Dr. Haggard, thank you. And Dr. Sparrow? Okay, and who should we have for an alternate director? Roth, Sparrow. Do we have someone from the West Coast? Thank you, Director Mastrangelo. She sighed with resignation. Any further comments? Okay, would anyone like to move Dr. Roth, seconded by Dr. Siga? Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion carried. Thank you. It is only 15 minutes. I believe there's one more motion. Yes, to appoint our CFO as the collector for 2024. Thank you, Dr. Siga, seconded by Dr. Johnson. Further comment? What an ominous title. All those in favor? Your motion carried. All right, item B is appointment of the nominated members for the Beaver Creek Water Advisory. I believe that this is the thing that's moving into the in camera, just because there are some questions. We want to make sure that that's protecting privacy. Next item is item C, Somas Fish Flows Committee, appointment of the ACRD director. So I'll just cover this one off. Dr. Cote wants to be on it. So if Renee, would you like to move that motion?
I gladly move the motion that Director Cody become the director for this case.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, item D is grant funding application for the UBCM Local Government Development Approvals Program. Alex, do you want to take this?
Yes, thank you. This is a grant opportunity through UCM's Local Government Development Approvals Program, as you just heard. This is a $150,000 grant that is fully funded and intended for developing, reviewing, and updating development application processes and improving efficiencies around housing approval. So if successful, the ACRD would engage with a consultant to work with staff to provide recommendations for the board to consider. This is the second round for this grant. The ACRD had unsuccessfully applied in 2021. I will highlight, though, that UBCM now intends to focus this grant on communities that have seen a minimum 1% growth in the last census cycle. We will certainly highlight that our electoral areas have experienced substantial growth since that time in the order of about 10%. So this is a grant application that I think would benefit the community, and we're looking forward to get going with it.
All right, thank you. Dr. Roth?
I would like to make the motion as presented.
Thank you. And Renee, would you like to second? Okay, thank you, Dr. Lacourcier. Any further comments? Go ahead.
I was just wondering, do we have enough study on that? Is there a timeline? If all the areas are going to do this, are we going to have enough consultants? Because everybody's going to be looking for consultants to do this. So might be too practical.
That is absolutely a concern that we have, and actually many other local governments have as well. So, I mean, this the timeline for this grant application is due by the first week of March. If we are successful, I think there's a 90-day turnaround on these ones. So if we are successful, we'll put the feelers out there and we'll engage people if they're available. But it is something we are monitoring about the lack of consultants to deal with housing policies like this.
Thank you. Dr. McClellan, go ahead.
Yeah, If we got a slug of consultants out there, what's it gonna cost us? Never mind how much the grant is. That looks like an expensive grant to get if we have to be with them, with our staff.
Go ahead, Alan.
I think the vision is that it'd be led by the consultant. So we would work with them on providing our current processes and policies that we have in place, but we would rely on the consultants to do the work to look at best practices and ways to improve and then report back to us. If I can add, I just know that the director representing is passionate about this one because there's very few other ways for us to explore efficiencies other than exploring our processes. And so the alternative to this is status quo, and status quo is the more applications we have, the more staff we need. And what we'd like to do is try and control that to some degree and explore the process to see where there's areas where we could perhaps have automation, areas where maybe we have preferred bidders or preferred builders that can pre-qualify and have online service. So there's a number of different areas that we could explore that could help reduce long-term costs. And the starting place is really a review of our policies, procedures on how an application arrives and then gets approved and gets implemented.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, that brings us to item E. Daniel, Island Rail Corridor Consulting Services Board.
Thank you. So the ACRD went through a process to seek some consultants to work with us on the rail corridor. This stems from a grant that we received last year from the provincial government. The grant was for $600,000, and we are working with a subcommittee as well as the Huachuca Nations as legally. I think it's public and fair to say that this is their land in terms of how consultation ought to have occurred. So now the question that we have on the island is, what is the vision for the corridor? I think for us, it was very clear that there still is a very strong preference for rail, but doing the economics and exploring the viability of that rail moving into the future is something that is beyond the skill set of this organization. So we went to RFP. The committee we have debriefed on the submissions made, and the recommendation that we are making is to advance with HDR consultants on this project.
Thank you. Any comments or questions or motions? Dr. Siga? You have to use the microphone.
Thank you. Sorry. If there's no further comments, I'd like to move that the Alberta Regional District Board of Directors award the Island Rail Corridor Consulting Service contract to HDR Incorporated in the amount of $320,000, excluding GST, and authorizes the union to negotiate and execute the contract on behalf of the regional district.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Okay, any further comments? Dr. McClellan, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly what are they going to be doing? I mean, $300,000 isn't a lot of money in some books, but it's still adding up because we've got a big increase in taxes already in this regional district.
Through the chair, they would be leading the economic exploration of feasibility of rail. They would be working with us to explore the economic impacts and the business cases that might relate to that in terms of freight industry and passenger rail. They'll be exploring alternatives to rail. And so because there are 5 different groups on the island doing similar work, we already know that Nanus has expressed the desire to not see rail go through their territory, or at least through the reserve. So the exploration of what other business viable uses could be made. I will also flag that HDR was the one consultant who made note of the problem that we face with the closure of Highway 4. And so they're aware of our transportation committee, and in their bid talked about making sure that they would present and have some exchanges with our transportation committee to talk about the similarities that we have in terms of the economic impacts of highway versus rail, but also exploring the viability of what are those alternative routes, and is rail one of the possible solutions. So there's a tremendous amount of research and outreach that is part of this. And like I said, it requires some rail expertise and understanding the economics or the economic impacts of rail. And so they're bringing a rather substantive team to work with us and explore those ins and outs.
Thanks for the question, Jack. I think some of the background there too is the money is coming to each of the different areas, regional districts, to work with First Nations on exploring rail. And the money is coming from the province, I believe, because it was the money that was going to be transferred to the Island Corridor Foundation once the rail was approved. But because of the board theatrics at the Island Corridor Foundation from First Nations members, I think the federal government got cold feet and basically killed the project. So with that, they are doing more work now to build a consensus. I think there's an opportunity for us to explore the value of rail to our area. And I think for us, it's just as much freight and bulk as it is passenger service, because of just the logistics involved. And the way that it overlaps with Highway 4 is interesting, because the news is a pinpoint as much as the hump is. Dr. Roth, please go ahead.
I'm curious to know if they would explore the cost of removing the tracks.
I believe that is included in the alternatives that they're doing, because the RDM is doing the same thing. Yeah. Dr. McClellan, did you have any follow-up?
But just, as long as I understand you, that the feds are giving us this money. Province, oh, okay. Because the Mid-Island Corridor didn't quite fit the bill. Okay, all right then.
Yes, that's exactly. I am as frustrated as you, but we'll keep plugging away. Yeah. Okay, so with that in mind, that brings us to the actual motion. Didn't write down if it was moved and seconded. I'm sorry. It was? Okay. Okay, with that, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to planning matters. So those of you who are not in the electoral areas, you do count for a quorum, but please just don't leave the building or disconnect from the meeting. That brings us to 9.1A. Yeah. Well, you stayed in the building then. That was the difference. Yeah, you can't leave now. That's you're Beaufort. Okay, that brings us to item A, which is Beaufort. So Alex, please take us through it.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing for it was held on the 6th of February for a property at 5400 Kingston Street in the Beaufort area. The property owners are applying to rezone the 3.5 hectare property of small holdings A1 district in order to facilitate the 2-lot subdivision that would be divided along the ENN railway right of way. Speaking of railways, that dissects this property. The application also involves an amendment to the Beaufort official community plan that would redesignate the property as small lot rural use. There was one letter of correspondence received and 4 members of the public in attendance at the public hearing. All the comments were generally supportive of the rezoning application, and the public hearing report minutes are presented for the board's consideration with a recommendation to proceed with second and third readings of the bylaws. Happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you. Dr. McClellan?
Make the motions if you're ready for them.
Yeah, you don't have to read them out. You can just say like public hearing report, minutes, first reading, all that stuff if you like.
Somebody write that for me, okay? That the public board of directors see the public hearing.
We have a seconder. Thank you, Director Roth. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you.
Board of directors receive the public hearing minutes.
Seconded by Director Sparrow. Comments? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Bylaw 1468, Beaufort official community plan amendment. Bylaw be read a second time.
Thank you, Director Roth. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carried.
Bylaw 1468, Beaufort community plan amendment bylaw be read a third time.
We have a seconder. Thank you, Dr. Roth. That brings us to any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
The bylaw P 1469, Regional District of Alberni-Clackavat Atlas Amendment bylaw be read did I read that one already? Second time, no, yeah. That's,
Go ahead, Director Roth. Oh, microphone. Yeah, because there's a difference between the amendment bylaw and the.
Oh,
zoning
okay,
act.
sorry,
Yeah,
I'll second it.
yeah,
that's
no
what
worries.
confused me
Thanks,
too.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really close together because the numbers are based on what we do, but the actual documents are different. Yeah. Okay, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
Bylaw 1469, Regional District of Alberni-Clackavat Zoning Atlas Amendment bylaw be read a third time.
Seconded by Director Roth. Thank you. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, thank you for that. That brings us to item B, the Willowbrae Road, Long Beach. Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you. This one is a development variance application for property in Millstream area, Long Beach. It would reduce the watercourse setback from 30 meters to 25 meters, or about 82 feet, to allow for the placement of a mobile home on the currently vacant property. The Long Beach APC considered this application at their meeting on February 6th, where they supported the variance as presented. The variance would be a minor encroachment into that riparian area along Willowbrae, and the applicants have engaged the qualified environmental professionals to support the development. So at this point, the staff recommendation would be that the board proceed with the neighbor notification process and gather public input before making a final decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Siga.
Getting tired, sorry. If I could put forward that motion, that would be great.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roth. Any further comment? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Item C is also Long Beach. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This one's another variance application. This one is in Salmon Beach. It would reduce the front yard setback from 6.1 meters to 2.4 meters to allow for the construction of a storage shed that would be closer to the Front Street Road right away. Again, the Long Beach APC considered this application in February, where they supported the application as presented. The variance would allow for the construction of the shed in a manner that would avoid the riparian area and the tsunami hazard area closer to the waterfront. And again, with this one, staff recommend the board proceed with that neighbor notification process and bring it back to a future meeting once public input has been received. Thanks.
I'd like to put forward that motion.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roth. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. That brings us to item D, Sprout Lake item. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This is one more development variance application. This one is for the reduction of the rear yard setback in the R1 district on a property on Lord Road in the Sprout Lake area from 9.1 meters to 5.1 meters, and it would allow for the siting of a recently constructed deck that was built to replace an older rotting deck on the property within the same footprint. The Sprout Lake APC considered this application on January 29th, where they supported the application as presented. The staff recommendation is for the board to proceed with the neighbor notification process at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Lacosia.
I'll make the motion that the board of directors consider issuing development variance permit DVD 23009, subject to neighboring properties being notified as per the Local Government Act S 499.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Brings us to item E, Sprout Lake. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This one is a subdivision application in the Sprout Lake area, a 1.75 hectare property. The subdivision would create 7 Fairland strata lots, and as a requirement of the Local Government Act, for more than 3 new lots are being created. Parkland dedication is required either as 5% of the land as dedicated park or as 5% of the market value as cash and lieu. The applicant has proposed to dedicate a 0.1 hectare portion of land, which is about a quarter of an acre, that is adjacent to an existing Sander Park in the area. That is equivalent to just under 6% of the property, so slightly more than what is required by the Act, and located in an area that is adjacent to existing parkland. The expanded Sander Parkland after this parkland dedication would be about 1.16 acres in size, and then I know there's some local neighborhood trails that have been built through there. So the staff recommendation is that the board accept the parkland dedication as proposed. This proposal was brought before the Sprout Lake APC and the Sprout Lake Parks Commission at a joint meeting on the 29th of January, where we had a good discussion about it, and the group supported the proposal. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Director Lacroix?
I'll move that the board of directors accept the parkland dedication as presented on the proposed subdivision plan to meet requirements of section 510 of the Local Government Act.
Seconded by Director Roth. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item F. I would note that this is the one that has the late submission, the late item. The late piece of material, and this is for Beaver Creek. So please go ahead, Matt.
Thank you very much. This is a rezoning application. The applicants intend to rezone two portions of the property from RA2 to RA3 district to facilitate subdivision of up to 4 lots. Both portions of the property to be rezoned are located outside of the agricultural land reserve and within lands that are designated as residential use in the OCP. So the board considered this application on January 10th, where they resolved to consider rezoning following public notification. No public hearing is held for this proposal, as it is consistent with the OCP. There were 2 letters received. As you heard, one of those is included with a late agenda. Both letters reference the potential impact of on neighboring farmland, recognizing that this proposal would create acreage residential lots that are adjacent to the ALR. I would just highlight that the rezoning was referred to the Agricultural Land Commission, and their response highlighted that the subdivision only impacts the non-ALR land and recommended support for the proposal, provided that a 10-meter wide buffer of vegetation is maintained along the boundary, and a 2-meter high fence is provided as well. The bulk of this property would remain within the ALR as one piece, and the most direct potential impacts in staff's opinion would be to the property owner's farmland that would be remaining. So at this point, staff recommend that the board proceed with 3 readings of the bylaw and ensure that staff will work with the applicants on meeting the Agricultural Land Commission recommendations for a buffer and a fence at the subdivision stage if the rezoning moves forward. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Roth?
I'd like to move that bylaw P1487 Regional District of Alberni Qualified Zoning Atlas Amendment bylaw be read first time.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director Siga. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion carried.
A second time?
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
And a third time.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director McClellan. Any further comments? Does that count? Does that count as a second? Okay. All right. I just saw your hand move. So, okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item G, Local Government Act Housing Update, Provincial Home for People Action. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This is the final report we have for you, and it's a doozy. My apologies. This report provides an overview on the new housing legislation that was adopted by the province at the end of last year, with a focus on the impact to the regional district. Staff have outlined the bylaw and policy amendments that the ACRD must implement this year, and the options that the ACRD may implement if the board desires, and finally what we cannot do anymore under the new legislation with respect to public hearings, for example. The report provides a recommendation to receive this update and to proceed with the required or must implement bylaw amendments. All of the legislation updates under bills 35, 44, 46, and 47 are detailed in the report. I won't go into them in any great detail, but in general and within the context of the regional district, these relate to the small scale multi-unit housing units, the OCP and housing needs report updates that are required, the conduct of public hearings, expanded opportunities within development cost charge bylaws, as well as a new amenity cost charge framework that we can take advantage of, and the short-term rental regulation as well. So the aspects that the ACRD must accomplish this year include updating the zoning to allow for one secondary suite on all lots that are zoned single-family residential with no minimum lot size. So this would exclude lots that would allow for vacation use or seasonal use, for example, the Salmon Beach districts or the vacation home districts. Secondary suites would be specific to units within the home or attached to a primary dwelling. It would not be in addition to the detached accessory dwelling units, which are already permitted throughout the regional district on a 1 acre minimum lot size. So those that zoning to include the secondary suites in our zoning bylaw must be adopted by the end of June 2024. And further to that, updating the 6 electoral area housing needs reports to be more robust and to include a 20-year timeline, new census information that was released after our last housing needs reports were adopted, and to evaluate the capacity for managing the expected growth. So the housing needs reports in our areas were last adopted, or I guess were first adopted by the board in 2021. And these new reports are due by the end of this year, so end of December 24. And then finally, just to highlight as well that to support the housing policy work that needs to be done, the province has provided a $142,000 grant to the ACRD to help fund incremental staff time or contractor time required to implement the new regulations, and that funding is available until the end of 2025. Happy to answer any questions about housing if anybody has.
Great, thank you. Director Roth, and then Dr. McClement, and then Director Sparrow.
I'm just curious to know why we need a motion when it's a legislative requirement.
So I'm happy to answer that. We spent some time thinking about it. I think it would be fair to everybody to have the clarity in the work plan was the main idea for it. You know, and it allows us the opportunity to establish that as a need that has to happen this year into a public meeting agenda as well. So that would be the rationale for the staff recommendation.
Gives directors the ability to react to them too. Right? Next up is Director McClement, and then Director.
Yeah, what is I haven't heard, and I notice here that it's all part of the short-term rentals, etc. And we have a date where we decide we're in or out of this. Is what is the ACRD decided on that?
So so some background on that with the short-term rental legislation, we are automatically opted out of it. We're not. We're not subject to it. That's what I'm trying to say. If the board wishes to opt into that regulation, it must do so by March 31st. And if it chooses to do so, the new regulations would take effect here locally by November 1st. What we have presented here would be the first time the board has seen this, and there's no recommendation from the staff at this time to opt into those regulations. We were anticipating, based on this discussion, bringing forward another report in March to discuss it further, but the initial staff recommendation right now would be that we have the short-term rental temporary use policy process to deal with short-term rentals in our community, and it would be prudent to work with that or to continue working with that. We've had that in place for 6 years now, and then we'll look again at opting in the future if the board wishes to do so. But we're open to some more discussion on that for sure.
Yeah, thank you. I was just curious when it said here, well, by March 31st, and if you don't want it this year, we can go in next year or next year. And I was just wondering. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Daniel?
I just want to add to that if the board did want to opt in to both the short-term rentals and the business license, we would need time to reformat our work plan because we do not have the staffing resources to take on that volume of work. That is some pretty intensive work with a significant amount of outreach because the public will definitely want to have their input on any system like that we create. So just want to make sure that the board understands that we prefer opting out just out of the logistics of staffing at this point.
We just don't even have the desk space for business licensing at that point there. Director Sparrow?
Thank you for that. A few questions about short-term rental. So we could opt in, we're not going to. So my question is, can we opt out in 5 years? Is that a possibility to say, it didn't work?
If there's another government, maybe, but not likely under this one.
Once you opt in, you're in for life.
Yeah, I don't think that that's. Yeah.
So we actually spoke about this earlier this week, and I went back to the website. The province doesn't share any information on what the implications are if you opt in. I would hope that there'd be an opportunity to pull back out again. But if the board were considering opting in, that would be something that we would ask specifically of the province to make sure that we're not stuck there forever.
Yeah, from a First Nations perspective, if there's nothing where it explicitly states that you can get out, it's likely you're in forever, because that's been our experience. Yeah. Director Steer, unless you wanted a follow-up, Director Sparrow? Okay, one follow-up and then Director Steer.
Thank you. As far as short-term rentals, do we need a TPU for all of them? And are we gonna put that on the website eventually or not?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. So the ACRD zoning bylaw does not allow for commercial short-term rental use on any of the residential properties. So to operate a short-term rental right now, you would need to apply for the temporary use permit and then go through that process. The alternative would be a bed and breakfast. So our home occupations that are permitted throughout the residential zones allow bed and breakfast, which would be the renting of individual bedrooms, but not the entire suite or the entire home. So we have considered a number of temporary use permit applications for short-term rentals, and I think the process works reasonably well.
Thank you. Director Steer?
Thank you. Thank you through the chair. I'll refrain from the comment. It's just we've been going through an extensive process around the short-term rental regulations and the opting in process. So, but I'll leave it for another day because I'm exhausted from the topics.
Be interested in seeing what decisions come out of that. Okay, with that in mind, we do have motions in front of us here. Is anyone willing to entertain that, or are there more comments? Dr. Roth, go ahead.
I'll make the motions.
Okay, we'll do the first one. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. This is for receiving the Local Government Act Housing Update Report. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
And the second motion as presented.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Siga. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Alrighty, that brings us to item 10, reports. 10.1 is committee reports. We only have one. Originally, Director Beckett was going to give it, but he's not here. So I've been told that Director Sparrow might be able to take it.
I think that's diverted back to me.
No, I'm sorry, Director Sparrow, you have to start. It says it right here. No. Daniel, if you would, please go ahead.
The Transportation Committee had a meeting last week, and it was good to run through all of the details of the various impacts, the various projects, the various budgetary things that are coming forward. We did also discuss the PIC that went to the board regarding the budget, the proposed budget of 70,000. There was good discussion around that because the province is advancing with a consultant, and we got to receive that information firsthand. And the consultant will be working for all of 2024 to do a full assessment of all the possible emergency routes, of which they identified 3. One of which is the now forgetting the Horn Lake Connector. Thank you. And the other, of course, which is through the Cowichan Way. So what they will be doing is doing a full assessment of the viability of the routes. They'll be looking at the impacts and the costs associated with the route. And they will, with regard to costs, you're going to take a look at the costs with regard to bringing it to a permanent emergency route. So not paved highway, but a permanent emergency route. And so that will give us a good idea of the cost. Will give the province a good idea of the cost. We flagged that we were hoping to award HDR because at that point it was already a report that was going to the board and was public. So I did add that and verbally provided an update and understood that HDR would be looking at the economic context that is going on. which then leaves some of the socioeconomic impacts that were felt, summarizing all of that, because there's a number of different agencies putting that together. The option to explore the difference in cost between an emergency road and highway, and of course, the development of both a business case and a lobbying or provincial engagement strategy, shall we call it. And so the committee would prefer going, and they made a recommendation to the board that we would advance with the $70,000 budget, just to provide the additional tools to be able to work with somebody that could help coordinate and assemble all that information to give us the strongest possible footing in 2024. And so I thought I would share that with the board. Of course, the formal minutes will come forward a little bit later, but given that the meeting, I believe, was on Friday, we're just providing the verbal update. It feels like it was 2 weeks ago, but it was just Friday. So if there's any questions, I can certainly help out. And I did most of the talking at that meeting, so I can appreciate that, Mike. Director Sparrow was like, why don't you just keep on talking, Dan? And so that's what I'm doing.
Director Sparrow, anything to add?
That was like 95% of it, yeah. And my tone was different on Saturday. So some of the things they did say was it's going to be an emergency route they're looking at to get their consultants. It's not going to be a secondary route. And that was one of the things we voted on, was the terms and conditions, changing that to emergency and a secondary route. So that was part of the reason we want to get consultant in, because what's going to happen, I think, at the end of the day, is we're going to end up in the same place we've always been with all these reports, and then not going any further. I don't believe he said he was going to activate the emergency route, just put a consultant report in to say, this is the emergency route. What do you want to do? That's sort of where I got to. So that's why we went with this, asking for $70,000 from the board to keep pursuing this and lobbying it, move it forward. Because otherwise we'll have another report, it'll be 25 years in the making, and we'll get nowhere again. So that was most of it, yeah. You know, that you pretty well. One thing we did talk about was the Christmas Day shutdown. Merry Christmas, no more road. That kind of got a little bit of ruffle, and the problem we had with getting the money but not being able to use the money we had to the different agencies that were between the two of them, right? The one was the emergency agency and EOC money, I think. Anyway, we did get it straight away after the fact, but we did open up on our own bankroll to begin with, so that was brought up too. Other than that, I think we have a robust discussion on a lot of things, but we sort of are at a point now we're getting tired of all the studies. He's going to do the logistics of the engineering studies, but we have to do the logistics of the social economic studies and try and push them together and move them forward. Hopefully we can do that. It did say in the report there was $40 million in the West Coast and lost. And they flagged almost 200 maybe on the valley over. So that's a lot of money to lose over these days. So other than that, I don't think I have much more.
Thank you. Would you like to move receiving of the report? Thank you, Director Roth. Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, moved by Director Sparrow, seconded by Director Roth. Any comments or questions? Director McClellan, go ahead.
Well, just, we have a letter coming up under unfinished business, which directly contradicts a lot of stuff that we happen to know might be accurate. And so I think under that, maybe I'll make some comments. We do have studies paid for by the regional district, paid by the Port Authority in town. And they are engineer studies, and we even had down to prices, but the person that's going to have to do this, the outfit that's going to build the roads, the province. And if we keep paying for studies and keep paying for, just tell them what they got to do. They don't seem to know.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carried, thank you. All right, that brings us to 10.2 area reports. So we'll start off with Area A. Bob, did you have anything?
Nothing to report. Thanks.
Thank you. Area B, Dr. McClellan.
Nothing to report.
Area C, Dr. Siga.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that I appreciated being able to go to the Climate Change and Health Conference, and two items come to mind that I would like to share. Number one is that the medical health officer said they do not deal with septic systems. It's a reactive process only. So if we want to protect our waterways, it's our responsibilities, which was very interesting. And the other point that was made was there is research funding available if you connect with the University of Victoria researchers in specific programs, and they will go and get the SURE grant. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, and next up is Victoria Area D, Dr. LaCourcia.
No report.
Area E, Dr. Rock.
Yeah, on Sunday, January 21st, Beaufort and Beaver Creek held another town hall meeting. We didn't do an official count, but about 75 people attended the meeting. Among many topics, we talked about the new regulations surrounding short-term rentals. The majority of the people that attended the meeting wished to stay out. We also discussed the proposed aquatic center. It was noted that only 3.7% of the public responded to the surveys. The majority of people agreed that they want an asset referendum in each electoral area. People at the meeting also noted the following: that the cost is too high, it's a burden, it's not an essential service. When it came to the apportionment of cost, Beaver Creek and Beaufort would pay the most. Beaver Creek taxpayers would pay 30% more than city taxpayers. Everyone should contribute the same amount. Renters get a vote, yet rental owners cannot increase the rent to reflect the additional cost of an aquatic center. And what will happen to Echo Pool, and what would be the cost to refurbish Echo Pool? We also talked about Beaver Creek drinking water. When one person at the meeting said that drinking water should take a priority over a new aquatic center, most people in the room agreed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next up is Area F, Cherry Creek, Dr. Spiro.
Well, thank you for that. We also had a town hall meeting, the first one ever in Cherry Creek. We had about 70 plus people there because it was Super Bowl Sunday apparently. It was Super Bowl on my meeting. They didn't ask me. That's okay. What I did with mine was I went over where our tax dollars go at Cherry Creek. People think that from the name on the top and the money on the bottom, we get all the money in the middle. I kind of told them that doesn't reflect the way it does in the regional district. So I went over how it all goes and what happens, and the future implications of Cherry Creek being they are an improvement district and they are not available to get any government grants at this particular point in time. And they're all told they're on their own if they want to stay independent. So the upcoming meetings on the budget and the conversion study is going to happen. That'll happen on March 14th. There's a conversion study at Cherry Creek to see what they want to do, what the costs are for staying alone. And one of the problems that came up, and it came up with the town hall, and it's more of a regional problem than it is a town hall problem, is effective ways to communicate to the people. And we try to figure out any way we can. We've tried Facebook, we've tried putting things on mailboxes, we've tried sandwich boards, newsletters, radio. We can't figure an effective way to reach the majority of the people. So it's not, and this is like this regional wide thing. If we have to do something close to here, how are we going to do it? We can find no effective way in all three town hall meetings we've had to figure out how we can effectively communicate to the people we serve. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. That merits its own discussion. Next item is, City of Port Alberni, Director Haggard, or is Director Minions here? Director Minions, do you want to take?
I am here, thank you, but I will defer to Director Haggard. She always has a wonderful report. Thanks.
Thank you. I was hoping that Jenny would be here because she's going to be so happy about this. The demolition site at the Somas property, 90 to 95% has been either sold, repurposed, or recycled, which is pretty amazing numbers for a site that large. And there are also two large buildings that the developers hope to reuse and is either commercial space or some kind of community space. They love these old buildings. And there's also a silo down there that's like super cool, and they're going to keep that as well and do something. So they're still going to keep some of the history of the property. Thank you.
Is it down on the waterfront? Oh yeah, okay. Great. Next up is District of Tofino, Director Steer.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. We're deep into the budget process, and in fact, tomorrow is an all-day session, and the staff, the wonderful staff from the ACRD, will be presenting tomorrow at that meeting. We also on Monday had a town hall. You guys were just discussing the Bill 35 on short-term rental regulations. We had a town hall meeting that was very well attended. as part of our consultation process, which has been extensive and ongoing, to look at the implications of potentially Tofino opting into that to that bill. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Next up is District of Euclid, Dr. McEwen.
Thank you. The District of Euclid is not in a hurry to opt in to those regulations. We passed a bylaw a year ago, September, that pretty much does the same thing as what the province is wanting us to do as far as owners being on the property if there's a B&B. So we're just going to hang back and see how it plays out and leave it at that. And other than that, we're deep in budget talks right now, as everybody is.
Thank you. For Hawaiian, we're currently in the process of budgeting as well. So I'm having the grants and aid list forwarded to our department, as well as we're going to review services, see if there's things that we can work with Banfield on, especially when it comes to that. In addition to that, we are working with Forum Asset Management, as well as a company called USI, on creating a master plan for property developments in our Banfield and Anakwa holdings. So we've been interacting with the ACRD staff on that, and a couple of initial conversations, at least on their side. And yeah, there will be more information as it develops over time, but most of it has just been introductory conversations so far. The process will likely take the whole year or more, so there'll be plenty of instances for engagement with the community of Banfield and staff and the board itself. So when we get to a point where we can do so, we'll probably come in and have them give a presentation about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and go from there. But so far, it's been moving forward in a pretty good way. I believe this week the company folks are coming in and doing a tour of the territory and having conversations with our staff and ECRD staff. That brings us to the next item, which is Dr. Johnson. Go ahead.
So Topot has unveiled our new website. It's been out for a while, so I think we've got most of the glitches. We are working on our annual budget, and we are also updating our OCP. So we're planning on holding a public hearing on March 19th. That's it.
I just loaded it up. It's really nice. Okay. Toquat.ca. Okay, next up is Ho-Chukwu Tribe. Dr. Coots, please go ahead.
Clickle, Mr. Chair. I believe this would have been brought up with my predecessor prior. Our Redford Homes development plan has now gone to public engagement. We are currently taking input and adapting. That can be found at the City of Port Alberni website. It is the APC-agenda-September 21st from 2023. And other than that, we are going to be beginning strategic planning in the near future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And finally, Dr. Mastrangelo, please go ahead.
Yeah, a couple updates. For the nation's government office, we opened a new department called Intergovernment Affairs, established a director, and have 2 employees that are going to be hired. And so that's pretty exciting. And next is there is early engagements happening with the Iquitos Island. That has been a bit of an interest and seems to be catching some excitement on the West Coast. So the developers have engaged with our nation, and we've really taken that as a respectful approach. The project looks at about 300 units, comprising about 100 rental apartments and 150 townhouses and duplexes, as well as a mix of single-family homes on the approximately 34-acre site. So this is all just starting discussions, and we'll see where all of that goes. But it's pretty interesting happening moment for our nation and people in general. So.
That's exciting. It's interesting to see how First Nations are helping to address the housing shortage as well, because a lot of what we can do is way different than what local governments can. So that's great. Okay, we could have a motion to receive the verbal reports. Thank you, Director Roth, seconded by Director Coots. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried, thank you. All right, that brings us to item 11A. It is the response regarding Highway 4, the alternate route from Minister Rob Fleming from Modi. Do you just want to introduce it? And we'll go right into comment.
Well, I think that the letter is a standard response. Ultimately, Minister Fleming is saying, yeah, we're aware of the problem. The problem exists in a lot of different spots and we're paying attention. We talked about this at the Transportation Committee as well, and that the letter is relatively cookie cutter. It's informed, obviously, but it doesn't really tell us anything. What I think is more important for us to pay attention to is the fact that Ministry of Transportation staff with a budget have been assigned to work with our Transportation Committee here in the ACRD to look at these alternative routes. And I know it's only to an emergency standard, but that is light years better than anything Minister Fleming could have put in the letter, because it's actual action and it's an actual budget. And so we said this at the committee level. I think it's good to repeat here. Those actions, that budget is much more important than the letter.
Thank you. Director McClellan?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's better to have, yes, let's get a emergency route and get it going. The difficulty I have is in this letter where they said, well, we studied it before and it wouldn't work. We actually came upon it. It was not cost effective, not, where's this letter here? And anyway, it's what they told us then is the same thing he wrote here. And it was wrong then and it's wrong now. So I think we made the right motion. This regional district, I think, has taken the right steps. I hope that if we're doing another study and getting another consultant in here at some amount of money, that somebody will listen. I think the province should be paying for the consultant, because they have to build the road. And we don't build highways or public highways. And if we're going to, I think we should put a toll on it and they can pay us back every time they use it.
This is just, I'm hearing a lot of the same things I've heard during our Banfield Road discussion. So this is exciting for me and frustrating at the same time. Yeah, exactly. Would anyone else like to have a comment? Go ahead, Daniel. And while you're doing that, I'm going to close that.
I just wanted to add one thing. I think one of the big difference in terms of timing is, and it's a difference that we flagged with the province, but it's to bear in mind that the province we have at the table is staff. And so the staff are going to assemble numbers and advance those into the ministry, which is their role. They won't be lobbying, they won't be talking about whether or not it's better for us than for Harrison Hot Springs, for example. That won't be their business. That will be our business. And so the assembly of a business case and making sure that that business case is supported, hopefully unanimously, by the members that make up this region will be very important. And I think one of the big differences between the work that was done about a decade ago and now is and remains the Treaty Nations and DRIPA. Our 10 nation communities have an ability to build an economy in a way that's very different than what we were contemplating 10 years ago. And I think it would be a real loss if we did not find a way to include the nations in this vision and in the business case for a road that impacts the entire region.
Thank you. Any further comments? So just on that, I do think that there's a lot of untapped co-belligerents that we could find with other First Nations, especially in the New Charles area. I think that's something where we can definitely find some more resources to really lobby the province in ways that create leverage for us, because that's how we're going to move the needle on this. I really hope we're more effective than Harrison Hot Springs at that point. But at the same time, it just comes down to finding the resources to make sure we can capitalize on any leverage we do create. And That's how it happened with the Banfield Road project, and it took us probably a decade of concentrated effort. So this is something that we're just gonna have to keep plugging away on. With that, we will have a recommendation coming and a briefing note on what we should do next. And it just comes down to making sure we have the political time to address this from a real perspective. So that right now that falls on Deb and I to make sure that we interface with not only other communities, but First Nations as well, and any organizations that support them, because it's going to take all of that. Okay, with that, can we have a motion to receive the report? Thank you, Dr. Roth, seconded by Dr. Sika. Sorry. All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, we don't have any late business. Do we have anything for question period?
So I'm just checking the email. There's no emails and there's no questions in Zoom. Thank you.
Great. That brings us to a recess to go into the regional hospital district. And I would remind folks that afterwards, we're not adjourning, we're going into. So can I have a motion to recess the meeting? Thank you, Dr. Siga, seconded by Dr. Johnson. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call the Hospital District Board of Directors meeting to order. And recognition of territories. I appreciate that we're conducting the meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Shuswap and Pachacet First Nations. And we also have directors calling in from other territories, and I'd like to acknowledge those nations with their gratitude and our respect. Approve the agenda. There's one minor change on here on the motion under 7A. That date needs to be changed from March the 6th to March the 13th. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Director McEwen, second by Director Sega. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. There's minutes from the Board of Directors meeting dated January 10th, 2024. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, could I get a motion that the minutes of the Alberta Clayoquot Regional Hospital District Board of Directors held on January 10th, 2024 be adopted? Moved by Director Sega, second by Director Johnson. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. No petitions, delegations, or presentations, no correspondence for action, but we do have a lot of correspondence for information. Firstly, from Island Health. Island Health secures home future growth of primary care services in Ucluelet. Code Hack 2024, 24 hours to solve healthcare challenges. New program for training pharmacare technicians on Vancouver Island. Applications open for 2024 Youth Harm Reduction Award. New intensive day program opens for youth with mental health concerns. Does anyone want to pull anything up for discussion? Director Steer?
Yeah, I just a quick comment on Island Health securing the home for future growth. And I know with Director McEwen there, I just wanted to emphasize how important not only to Ucluelet, but the whole surrounding region. It's going to have real benefits to healthcare delivery on the west side of the island. Super important contribution, and we're just so fortunate to have that move forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Steer. Anyone else? Seeing none, could I get a motion that this correspondence be received for information? Moved by Director McClellan, second by Director McEwen. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is request for decision, a special Board of Directors meeting, and there's a motion on the agenda. Would anybody like to move this motion? Director Roth?
Yes, I'd like to make that motion.
Moved by Director Roth, second by Director McEwen. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Now for reports. Banfield Health Center, Director Schmidt, do you have any report today?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care Society, Director Sega.
Thank you. Other than the follow-up, that there is quite a change in management for the Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care. Society. Nothing else to report. Thanks.
Thank you. West Coast Native Healthcare Society, Director Corsi, do you have a report?
No report.
Thank you. Tofino General Hospital, West Coast Directors, any comments?
Yeah, just a quick one regarding Sarah Gogo and I, the site administrator, and I were playing phone tag, but I did want to make a comment. There is regarding capital projects, the Sobering and Assessment Center land has been secured for that, and the potential for a mobile facility to be placed on that lot, which is adjacent to the Tonquin Medical Clinic. It will actually become the daycare, and the existing facility that Island Health owns will then, the daycare will move over to the new building, and the Sobering Assessment Center will be utilizing the space where the current daycare is in the Island Health facility. So that timeline is vague, but we're hoping to get that accomplished within 2024. I'm optimistic, or cautiously optimistic.
Thank you, Director Steer. Director McEwen, do you have any report? Thank you. West Coast, Alberni Quakewood Health Network, Director Cote's not here. Director Sika, do you have any report today? No report. West Coast General Hospital, no report. Any other comments or reports? Seeing none, can I get a motion that the Regional Hospital Board of Directors receive? Director Jack?
So moved.
Thank you. Second by Director McClement. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carried. No unfinished business, so late business. Is there any questions from the public, Heather?
There's no questions in email and no questions in Zoom. Thank you.
Could I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Director Coote, second by Director LaCourcier. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and welcome back. So that brings us to, before we adjourn, we're going to go in camera. So normally speaking, we read out a motion to go in camera, which I'll move, and then it identifies why we're going in camera. So that I'll move that this meeting be closed to the public as per the community charter under sections 91A. Personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. So that is what we'll be going in to discuss. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roth. Any further comments?